Tonight, summer of discontent, bracing for the impact as government workers fight to keep working from home. Forced back into the office 3 days a week.
This is going to be a major issue for millions of unionized federal workers.
What it all means for services you rely on. A diplomatic rift over Rafah. The U.S. holds back bombs from Israel.
We paused one shipment.
And a controversial cancellation here in Canada.
That shuts us out of Canadian society.
In my neighborhood, we lost 30 homes.
Also, getting ready to battle wildfire season with artificial intelligence. Plus, kids partnering with parents for property, the growing real estate trend.
The mortgage company now looks at us as a duo.
And getting a read on a unique competition.
Felt like I really achieved something really hard to do.
The inspiring student taking on the Braille Challenge.
CTV National News with Omar Sachedina.
Good evening, everyone. A battle is brewing between federal government workers and their employer tonight, and it has to do with the number of days they have to spend in the office. They're fighting a minimum requirement that kicks in come September, and if they don't get their way, they're promising what they call a summer of discontent. Here's CTV's Michael Couture.
The Trudeau Liberal government better prepare itself for a summer of discontent.
Union leaders are putting the federal government on notice. If they're forced back into the office 3 days a week starting in September, it won't be without a fight.
Whatever that looks like, whether it's at the borders, whether it's at the airports, we will be organizing concerted, unified actions across the country, both in the streets and in the workplaces as well.
The unions contend last year they secured an agreement to review telework requests on an individual basis.
For Canadians.
The government says the location of work is up to the employer.
And I will say that a hybrid work environment is not within the collective agreements.
Post-pandemic, tens of thousands of public servants were mandated to return to the office for 2 days a week, even though some say they're more productive at home.
What happens sometimes is like you come into the office, but there is nobody else from your colleagues coming in. So it makes you wonder, like, why even bother coming if it's the same, like, as home, you know?
But it is a big difference for downtown businesses who depend on those office workers to stay open.
Our sales will hopefully go up a lot more, and we'd be able to hire more staff, be able to pay a little bit better, and just get more clientele in.
Beyond grievances and labor complaints, the unions wouldn't specify what other actions they're willing to take. But they did promise they won't back down. Mike Couture, CTV News, Ottawa.
Diplomatic tensions are once again mounting between Israel and the United States. U.S. President Joe Biden said today he will not supply offensive weapons to Israel to launch an all-out assault on Rafah, where more than 1 million civilians are sheltering. The warning comes after Washington's decision last week to pause a shipment of heavy bombs to Israel. CTV's Genevieve Beauchemin reports.
A looming full-scale invasion of Rafah is now a major flashpoint in American-Israeli relations. The U.S. paused a shipment of 3,500 powerful bombs to Israel, and tonight President Joe Biden warned the U.S. could stop deliveries.
Civilians have been killed in Gaza as a consequence of those bombs and other ways in which they go after population centers. And I made it clear that if they go into Rafah, they haven't gone into Rafah yet. If they go into Rafah, I'm not supplying the weapons that have been used historically to deal with Rafah.
Israel is reportedly, quote, deeply frustrated with the U.S. move. It holds all borders in Gaza now and is launching targeted attacks against Rafah, the last Hamas stronghold, it says. Some analysts say news of the pause may play into Hamas's hands.
It likes to play off Israel against its allies, particularly against the United States. And if anything, the result of the hold on this the shipment of bombs could very well be to stiffen Hamas's resolve rather than to soften it.
Tens of thousands of people have packed up and fled Rafah since Israel issued evacuation orders. But many say there is nowhere left to go.
This is the fourth time we've moved, he says. Nowhere is safe.
Food supplies and fuel deliveries into Rafah have been cut off, and aid groups say they'll only be able to continue their humanitarian operations for a few more days. Geneviève Beauchemin, CTV News, Montreal.
1 week since students set up tents in support of Palestinians at Canada's largest university, they are digging in.
Thus far, the administration has not engaged in any conversations regarding our demands. This is a protest. We are no longer interested in conversations. We are demanding commitments.
Demonstrating students say they won't leave until U of T discloses its ties to and divests from Israeli companies. The school responded with concerns over large piles of firewood in the protest area, outsiders entering the encampment, and hateful messages and altercations.
To the summer breaks! Let's leave them!
A group of counter-protesters waving Israeli flags surrounded the fenced encampment tonight, with police keeping both sides apart. A decision to cancel a flag-raising ceremony in Ottawa to mark Israel's Independence Day next week has created controversy. CTV's Annie Bergeron-Oliver on the reason behind the decision and the reaction.
For the first time since 2007, nobody will be invited to Ottawa City Hall to watch as the Israeli flag is raised.
It's a very important event for many in the Jewish community. Just simply canceled it shuts us out of Canadian society.
The annual Israeli Independence Day event canceled due to what the city says is recent intelligence suggesting a public ceremony poses a substantial risk to public safety.
Ottawa police would be dealing with informants. They'd be monitoring intelligence community. They'd be looking at online activity.
The city won't say where that threat is coming from, but members of the Jewish community say security should have been stepped up so the event could go ahead. Speaking on Parliament, Jewish students said the decision echoes what is happening on university campuses.
Canadian Jews should be able to partake in important cultural events without being told that they have to be canceled, especially when we are taking the precautions to alert the necessary people.
Since the October 7th Hamas attacks, Jewish students say anti-Semitism has been rising on campus. Encampments and pro-Palestinian protests calling for an end to the war have grown in size and number.
Members of the Palestinian community say the flag shouldn't be raised at all due to Israel's military action in Gaza. Tomorrow, the Parliamentary Justice Committee will begin its new study on Islamophobia and anti-Semitism, Omar, in Canada.
All right, Annie, thank you. An Israeli-Canadian businessman was shot dead in Egypt in an alleged anti-Semitic attack. The man, identified by Israeli and Arab media as Ziv Keeper, was the head of a food exporting company. An obscure group called Liberation Vanguards has claimed responsibility. Global Affairs says tonight it's aware of the death of a Canadian citizen in Egypt. A Winnipeg court heard the recorded confession from an accused serial killer on the first day of his trial. In it, Jeremy Skibicki tells homicide detectives, "I was driven to do stuff like this because I was so spent emotionally. I killed 4 people." Despite that admission, the 37-year-old has pleaded not guilty to killing the women. His lawyers say he should be found not criminally responsible due to mental disorder, but the Crown alleges he preyed on the victims at shelters. Drake's mega mansion in Toronto was a target of an attempted break-in today, a day after a shooting critically injured a security guard at the rapper's home in an affluent neighborhood. And as CTV's Adrian Gobriel reports, there are lingering questions tonight about whether it's connected to a feud with another star.
Is that necessary? Is that necessary?
Drake's Toronto enclave turned from crime scene to spectacle today as this man tried to breach the mansion gates, eventually arrested under the Mental Health Act. In the posh Bridle Path neighborhood, shock has turned to anger.
They're sitting ducks.
Natasha Chase works next door to Drake's home. She knows his security guards personally.
It's really sad. The security guards are so amazing, and I believe it shouldn't have happened. I believe they should be more taken care of than they were.
Over the weekend, a long simmering feud between Canadian music icon Drake
and when I wake up
and Compton artist Kendrick Lamar blew up, with the two releasing a list of scathing diss tracks packed with serious allegations, which has left many questioning. Is the shooting directly linked to the brewing battle?
Is something going to happen to Kendrick Lamar or somebody close to him? That's where now this is getting very, very dangerous.
The famous feud between Tupac Shakur and the notorious B.I.G. ended in tragedy, though in the mid-90s, artists had to wait to release an album to have their battle track heard.
The immediacy of the releases, which also lends itself to the frequency of releases,
makes some of the dynamics of this dramatically different from prior clashes of MCs.
MC battles are a part of hip-hop culture. In an almost prophetic moment way back in 2016, a former president was asked to weigh in.
If Drake and Kendrick Lamar got in a rap battle, who do you think would win?
You got to go with Kendrick. His lyrics, his last album was outstanding.
It's important to note that detectives haven't said whether or not there's a connection between the war of words and this shooting, though it is part of their active investigation tonight. As for police, we reached out requesting an on-camera interview today. They declined. Adrian Gobriel, CTV News, Toronto.
And north of Toronto, the parents of an infant baby said a heartbreaking final goodbye to their son. Family and loved ones gathered for the funeral of 3-month-old Aditya Vivan, whose life was taken in a horrendous wrong-way crash that also claimed the lives of his grandparents. Too heartbroken to speak publicly, the boy's aunt delivered the eulogy, saying he is woven into the fabric of our lives forever. Adi possessed a light that could brighten up the darkest of days. Dangerous storms have killed at least 2 people as tornadoes tore through central and southeastern U.S.
Violent tornado! Violent tornado!
50 million Americans are under severe weather threats tonight. In Arkansas, powerful gusts ripped the roofs off these homes. Michigan is under its first ever tornado emergency. Multiple twisters shredded homes and businesses. And back here at home, with wildfires already burning in Western Canada and warnings of another devastating season this year nationwide, preparations are underway to try and prevent last year's record-breaking spread. And in some cases, they involve high-tech cameras that can detect a threat early. CTV's Paul Hollingsworth explains.
11 months ago, Nova Scotians were living a wildfire nightmare. Thousands were evacuated. 200 buildings, 151 homes were wiped out in this area alone.
In my neighborhood, we lost 30 homes, and they were all within about a block and a half of one another.
Desperate for solutions following the devastation of 2023's wildfire season, firefighters now have a new tool at their disposal. As communities continue to rebuild, the fire department has installed artificial intelligence cameras on cell phone towers.
We have 3 of them right now in place, and they continuously scan the landscape, and they're looking for smoke.
The new AI camera is basically a high-tech, high-level visual smoke detector that covers a massive area. Hammonds Plains, Middle Sackville, and Musquodoboit Harbor, all in the Halifax area, will be closely monitored.
If the program feels it's a wildfire, it sends it to a Fire Scout staff member. That person then looks at it.
If needed, firefighters would be called into action. Dustin O'Leary was evacuated last year and says the modern technology AI cameras bring will help with fire prevention, but he also wants improved evacuation plans.
How do you move people out of a community, out of a neighborhood, if they have an issue?
Halifax's Director of Emergency Management has fears that extend beyond just wildfires. Flooding damage from previous storms has yet to be repaired.
Every hurricane we do get, or every major event, it weakens things a little bit more.
Erica Fleck says with hurricane season starting in June, her flood concerns will become more heightened. Paul Hollingsworth, CTV News, Halifax.
Still ahead tonight, home co-ownership.
It's not ideal, but this is what people are doing these days.
More young Canadians are buying with their parents. Plus, meet the Saskatchewan boy competing in an international contest to discover the best at Braille. It's not easy to scrape together a down payment for a home, especially when prices are as high as they are these days. Necessity is pushing a large number of Canadian millennials to pair up with their parents and make the dream of home ownership a reality. CTV's Heather Wright on the growing trend.
Interest rates are high, home prices out of reach. But owning a home is still a dream many Canadians aren't ready to give up on.
We all had a conversation one day, should we put our money together?
Kirsten Cuffey is one of a growing number of Canadians buying a home and living with their parents.
It's not ideal, but this is what people are doing these days, or else people are just going to be stuck, and it's sad.
According to Statistics Canada, 17% of Canadian homeowners born in the 90s own their property with their parents. The number's even higher in the most expensive provinces. In British Columbia, 20.3%, while in Ontario, it's 19.8%. And while intergenerational home ownership is nothing new, realtors say the reasons why some families are choosing it are changing.
The prevalence of people doing this for purely economic reasons, to be able to afford a home, afford a bigger home, or afford a home in a city or town where they want to live.
Even for those who can't afford the down payment and the mortgage payments, their salary might not pass the stress test.
If I co-signed with my mom, even just putting her as a 1% owner, even though she had no money involved, the mortgage company now looks at us as a duo.
This report is part of a series looking at home ownership in Canada. The authors say it shows just how challenging it is to enter the housing market, even more so for those without family support. Heather Wright, CTV News, Toronto.
Prince Harry is back home in the UK for a brief visit, but his spokesperson said he won't meet his father because of the King's, quote, full program. Harry was in London to mark the 10th anniversary of the Invictus Games, while over at Buckingham Palace, a few kilometers away, King Charles met members of the public at a garden party. Still ahead, playing it safe.
These large fan-based zones down in the downtown core, it just wouldn't work. It has worked in the past and it won't work this time.
A cautious game plan for hockey watch parties. The disgraced former head of Spanish soccer, Luis Rubiales, will stand trial for his unsolicited World Cup kiss. Rubiales faces 1 count of sexual assault and 1 of coercion for kissing player Jenny Hermoso after Spain's Women's World Cup soccer win. Spanish prosecutors are seeking a 2-year jail penalty. Hermoso says she never consented to the kiss. An Indianapolis sports writer is being pulled from covering the WNBA because of this exchange with star player Caitlin Clark, who makes a heart gesture after every game.
I do that at my family after every game, so
okay,
it's
well, let's
cool.
Start doing it to me and we'll get along just fine.
You like that?
I like that you're here.
Greg Doyle has now reportedly been suspended for 2 weeks, and his paper is banning him from covering all of Clark's games and news conferences. He has since apologized. And the remarkable run of the Professional Women's Hockey League scored more points with its fan base, with the league's first ever playoff game.
But now Natalie Spooner shoots. She scores!
PWHL Toronto put on a dominating display in front of their raucous home crowd, treating them to a 4-0 victory. 2 Canadian contenders are duking it out tonight in the NHL's second round of the Stanley Cup playoffs. The high-stakes showdown included a challenge from Vancouver's mayor to Edmonton's.
We'd like for you to fly the flag of our beloved Canucks above City Hall and rock one of these amazing Vancouver Canucks jerseys. And in the unlikely event that Edmonton actually wins, we will do the same. And so my question to you, are you up to the challenge? Because we are. Hey, little buddy.
Mayor Sam, I happily accept your challenge. So get ready to wear that jersey on the day Canucks lose.
And while it's game on, some Canucks fans will have limits on how and where they can cheer on their team. CTV's BC Bureau Chief Andrew Johnson explains.
It's being done safely in Toronto, Edmonton, and Winnipeg. Thousands of fans gathering outdoors to watch playoff hockey on the big screen, but not in Vancouver. The Canucks host pregame festivities, but when the puck drops, the party ends.
These large fan-based zones down in the downtown core, it just wouldn't work. It hasn't worked in the past and it won't work this time.
Now that the Canucks and Oilers are meeting in an all-Canadian second-round series, Vancouver will host an outdoor viewing party, but not next to the arena or anywhere downtown. Instead, at this residential park, kilometers away.
That's the thoughtful intention here, is that we don't want to repeat what happened in the past, and that's why we're not doing a big activation right downtown.
Now that's an idiot.
The past, a painful and embarrassing night for Vancouver. Hours after the Canucks lost Game 7 of the Stanley Cup Final in 2011, the city erupted into chaos. Police cars were flipped over and burned, stores looted, close to 150 people injured. 13 years later, the city remains a hesitant party host.
It's also a time to show off the fact that Vancouver fans can celebrate in a family-friendly, fun, and safe way.
The city says there is a possibility of a bigger outdoor viewing party at a larger venue if the Canucks advance into the third round of the playoffs, and it won't be downtown. Andrew Johnson, CTV News, Vancouver.
And the Olympic torch is now in host country France ahead of this summer's Paris Games. Quite a show as it sailed into the port city of Marseille today on a ship from Athens, the birthplace of the Olympics. After the break.
A different language, and it's a really cool language.
He teaches us what life is really about every single day.
Meet the fourth grader gearing up for a one-of-a-kind skill test. A unique international competition will soon feature a young boy from Saskatchewan who is preparing to showcase his language to the world. CTV's Alison Bamford has his inspiring story.
With these machines, Isaiah Goche can read, write, and search the internet, all through Braille.
It's a different language, and it's a really cool language.
The 10-year-old was born with a visual impairment, first learning the code in kindergarten. Now the fourth grader is at a grade 7 level and one of the top Braille students in the world.
Isaiah's smarter than us.
Isaiah qualified for the Braille Challenge Finals, an international competition in LA next month, after beating out hundreds of others from across Canada, the US, and the UK. The challenge will test speed and accuracy in reading, spelling, and proofreading.
Their print is Braille, so they should have the same opportunities as a student that learns with sight.
He's the first in Saskatchewan to ever qualify.
Isaiah says, don't give up on your dreams. If you can't walk, if you can't see, you can do anything that you put your mind to. He teaches us what life is really about every single day.
And for Isaiah, it's more than just a chance to be the best.
To be the first, maybe other people can just realize how important Braille is, and just other blind students just try their best and they'll definitely make it.
Alison Bamford, CTV News, Martinsville.
Amazing. And Isaiah, we are cheering you on. That's a snapshot of this Wednesday for all of us at CTV National News. Thank you for watching. Good night and see you tomorrow.